Hello and welcome to another Retro Island Diskettes, the show where we abandon a guest on Retro Island for the remainder of their days, but not first without them sharing with Andrew and I their life in retro and their music choices through which to tell their tale.
That's right, Neil, and today's guest is somebody we could learn a great deal from as well as about, because he's the co-host of arguably the biggest UK retro podcast out there, TheRetroHour.
And his retro experience culminated recently with him supporting DJ Yoda at a packed-out event armed only with 2 Amigas to entertain the masses.
An awful lot to talk about then with our guest today, who is none other than Ravi Abbot. Welcome, Ravi.
Hello guys, and I'm really happy to be on Retro Island. I love the palm trees. It's a bit smaller than I kind of envisioned originally.
You're very welcome, Ravi, and we're looking forward to getting to know you. So why don't you kick us off with your first choice of tune?
So the first track I'm going to choose is Lemmings to the Shadow Tribe, and I was a massive fan of Lemmings originally, and it was one of the first time I'd heard music that I recognised being played. Now, Lemmings 2 was kind of the follow-up for this, and it really needed to impress, and splitting the Lemmings into different tribes was wicked, but the Shadow Tribe were the coolest. They were like the James Bond kind of spy tribe.
Definitely some familiar sounds in that tune there, Ravi. And I'm not surprised that you chose an Amiga tune, to be honest, given your love of the Amiga. Was the Amiga your first computer?
I think it was the first computer that I owned. So I had a Amstrad PC, but that was kind of also being used for my mum's PhD at the same time. So I got an Amiga 2000 for myself, and I'd play Road Rash on that a hell of a lot. And Lemmings, of course. People forget how big Lemmings was. It was like such a revolution in gaming.
Yeah, not many people start off with the 2000. It's usually the 500 or the 600. Is that something that you bought yourself?
No, we actually had Central Television, which was located in Nottingham, and they'd have their studios, so they'd be using Genlocks and doing kind of weather production on it. And my dad worked for the local university, so they loved Amigas for animation with all the fine art students. So we ended up buying some cheap old stock from Central Television, so we still had a lot of the weather programs in the garage. We used to do our own like kids weather show with a green screen and stuff. It was great fun.
So Ravi, you're obviously a young man because you've started out on an Amiga rather than those 8-bits that Neil and myself did. But were you still aware of 8-bit machines at the time?
I was totally trapped in an Amiga world. Like, no 8-bits I was aware of. Later on, I went to my friend's house in Hull, and he had a Spectrum, and he showed me all the great games, and I was like, wow, this machine's really cool. But I'd only really known about the Amiga, and I'd honestly thought there was nothing else. I was like, oh, this is the future, this is a machine, because we had so many when we were kids.
You mentioned there that your dad worked with artists or did art on his Amiga. Is that something that you were ever drawn to, or was it purely a games machine for you?
Oh, the creativity for me was number one. Games came secondary. So, like, the first thing I actually remember doing on it was making a little animation on D-Paint of Robin Hood firing an arrow and then splitting a tree in half. We used to use this presentation software called Scala, and it was so powerful. You could define areas as buttons, and we used to, like, make our own point-and-click adventures or stupid presentations and stuff like that, and play around with trackers and stuff.
Were you starting to form an idea as to what you wanted your career to be when you grew up, and did you envisage it involving computers?
Yeah, it was weird because I was massively into radio. So my career, I actually just wanted to be on pirate radio. So it wasn't really a career. But I ended up studying all the kind of technical aspects of pirate radio and all the background. Yeah, I kind of got deep into that and aimed to go on radio, but that changed into me becoming a theatre technician because I just got totally excited by audio equipment and how that all worked.
So Ravi, the Amiga was the first computer you were introduced to. What age were you at the time?
Probably around 11 or 10, and then I stuck with it till probably about 18 or 19 and refused to use any other system. I think the first time I used a Mac was when they had those Power Mac digital audio ones in a studio, and a PC. That was a bit earlier, but I still really stuck with the Amiga far too long than you should have.
And if you remember back at that time, computers like the Amiga and even in the ST were kind of sold on that creative basis, weren't they? And they were pretty much unparalleled for quite a long time.
Yeah, totally. Like, I remember when I went into the university, there was all these students and they were all there on these Amiga 4000s and 2000s, all editing. And I came in with a copy of Road Rash and just stuck it in one of the machines. And they were like, oh, you can play games on this as well? So for me, it was really the creative aspect, and the gaming kind of came secondary. I thought it was like a Mac, you know. You could do a lot of creative stuff, but the games weren't really the top thing. But now I realise a lot of people were just in it for the gaming, and that was the main thing for them.
I was speaking to Stephen Jones recently, who you may know from the Checkmate Amiga 1500.
Oh yeah, Stephen's a legend. He's been at shows for absolutely years pushing stuff.
He is, and he was talking to me about his frustration during the Amiga days with people's perception of it being a games machine first and foremost, and it was actually a big hurdle for him in pushing a lot of his business products, that people would just say, no, it's a games machine, why would we use that for our business? So it was a big problem.
Yeah, because it was a really serious machine, like, you know, like the Power Macs of the day. And the thing was, I remember going to my friend's house in Wales, and he had an Amiga 500, and I was like, what's this toy? You know, and he was running games on it, exactly the same games that I'd play. But I was like, you can't edit on this, you can't, you know, that we were doing SVHS editing on the fly with titling and all of this stuff.
You could do it on the 500, you just needed to wait sometimes for days for things to render.
Okay.
But you could get there eventually.
Yeah.
But there's lots more Amiga talk to come over the next few tracks. So why don't you introduce your next track, Ravi, and we'll carry on with the Amiga talk.
Well, as I said with this Road Rash disc, that was my first kind of exposure to Amiga gaming and, of course, Lemmings. But when I put this Road Rash disc in, this beautiful music came in, and it was kind of, it was the Cracktro from Skid Row, and I'd never known of this illegal piracy scene behind Amiga, and also the graphics around it and the kind of atmosphere of the music. It was really unique. I'd never heard anything like that, and just seeing that and the visuals and the colours, I was like, wow, there's a whole other world. And it had these, you know, codes to call up the BBS numbers, and even postal addresses to write people to trade discs and stuff. It's like, what is this world?
And piracy were very much the norm on our chosen 16-bit platforms, the Ataris and the Amigas. But for our console-owning friends, it was very much less common. At least it certainly was in the UK, because it required specialist equipment. If you recall, at the time there were mod chips, hardware hacks, external disk drives. Do you think that console owners somehow missed out by not experiencing this darker subculture to gaming?
Well, it was strange because I used to basically go to this shop in Nottingham called Tech Exchange, which was like the official Amiga retailer, and then it decided to just go into the depths of piracy. So for quite a few years, we were getting all our discs burnt from there, and it even got up to CD stages, and they had PlayStations advertised in the window. And a lot of these crack groups that were from Amiga came on to cracking the PlayStation stuff, like Callisto. I remember they did a lot of releases. And as soon as I got a PlayStation, I got it chipped and it broke, and my dad absolutely killed me. I remember that. But I don't think they were missing out, because I remember going to school and there was huge lists of discs that you could kind of tick off items on, and then you get them the next day. And yeah, it was rampant on the consoles for me as it was on the 16 bits.
Yes, that's because, of course, we're forgetting your age, because I do recall, when you had the sort of PlayStation era, people used to have these black folders. Do you remember the little black leatherette type folders? And they used to be full of all of these handwritten CDs. But yeah, before that, when we had cartridges, we were pretty much stuffed.
Yeah, that was it. Even to the point, I remember people were making pirate video CDs that were running on PlayStation's original ones with some dodgy kind of codec. Yeah, a lot of dirty movies used to go around.
So did you ever attend any of these fabled copy parties that we hear about, or did all of your purchases happen at this shop that you mentioned?
Well, there was quite a lot at the shop, but that shop ended up disappearing, and I don't know what happened there. But also we had a local car boot place, so we'd have a guy who'd he'd be really good at piracy. He'd have like the black discs back, copied ones, and he'd have, full colour printed CDs and everything. So it was really good. But then it all just went down and downhill. I remember he disappeared, and then I went to a local flea market, and there would be a guy selling Dreamcast stuff. So you could have boot discs for the Dreamcast, but you could also have PlayStation games. It was like Bleemcast and Connexix virtual game system. I remember that, and there was a lot of kind of little piracy. And I remember at one point I was working at Asda, and there was a collection of discs called Mr. Blobbies. And this guy would be like, "Do you want Blobby 1 or 2?" And he'd be like selling them on the car park. That was fun.
So where was all this happening for you, Ravi? You mentioned, was it Central Television earlier? Whereabouts in the country were you?
So we're in Nottingham in the Midlands, so it's kind of the furthest place away from the sea. But it's kind of got a little Midlands triangle of Nottingham, Leicester and Derby. So as we'd be going to retailers, there'd be some near Leicester and some in Derby. So you just kind of do this little triangle circle to get all the good games.
Yeah. And in terms of using your Amiga, did you have many friends who were also into Amigas and computing, or was it more of a solitary hobby for you?
I'd say all of my dad's friends, which were like, 40, 50 were into it. And all my other friends were PC people that I would constantly rant at and say, "Look, the Amiga's better," and get nowhere with. But when stuff like the PlayStation came out, that was like universal. Everyone was, all playing the same stuff.
That transition from the Amiga to the PC, it was a difficult one, at least it was for me. I remember when I first got my first 486 and loaded up Windows. I think it was Windows 3.1 for the first time. And it seemed to be like, one step forward and two steps back. I knew the power was there in the hardware, but the software, Workbench just seemed years ahead still. And a lot of the things the Amiga did just seemed years ahead, even though we knew it didn't have the power of the 486.
I think the only thing that appealed to me back then was, with like 486 and stuff, was games like SimCity. And big titles that, had the full soundtrack on it and stuff. That's what really appealed, but it still did seem massively behind. I remember playing Doom at full speed on my 060 and stuff like years later, and still some of the PCs were a bit slow running it. I don't know. It's hard.
It was a bit of a weird transition though, wasn't it? Because I think quite shortly after that, it was only within a few years, you started having games like Carmageddon and things like that really hitting it hard on the PCs. At that point, I think a lot of the old 16-bit machines just got put in the cupboard.
Well, it's also like, as you said, the piracy connection and the kind of demo scene connection. The PC scene was rubbish for doing demos. Like the Amiga scene stayed very strong doing demos, but also with the piracy stuff, as it moved online, a lot of it changed. Like, I used to work for a site called Free Games for You, and this was all pre-Napster, and it would be done in I think like 2.8 megabyte files, because it used to be on Usenet. You'd get like 21 or 22 of these files, and you'd have to download each individual one off a little Yahoo briefcase and then recompile it all on your PC. And then it wouldn't work.
You'd have to know your unrar switches to unrar all of them into one file.
Yeah, exactly. But a lot of those kind of things like private FTP servering and FXPing, I used to do quite a lot. And that was like a lot of the Amiga people were moving onto the PC and using their skills on that.
So your Retro Hour co-host, Dan, we know he's an avid Amiga fan also. Did you know him at this point?
No, not at all. I actually met Dan when I first started doing YouTube videos, which must have been in around 2006 or 7. And there was nobody else online at the time doing any Amiga videos. And I saw this really slick guy, and I was like, oh, God, who is this guy taking all my views? So I messaged him and said we should go out and meet or something. Where are you based? And it turned out he was 15 minutes down the road from my house.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So we met in the city centre and then got horrendously drunk and ended up shouting about house music in some club, and then got on like wildfire ever since.
So Ravi, before we go even deeper into the Amiga, can you introduce your next track?
So the next track I've chose is Gods, and this is just a fantastic tune, and it was made by one of my favourite artists, which is John Fox, a former lead singer of Ultravox, and he was alongside David Whittaker, who's another amazing Amiga composer, and this is just beautiful electronica.
Gods came from the Bitmap Brothers stable of games. From that same company, we had games like Speedball 2, Xenon 2, Magic Pockets, Chaos Engine, and many more titles, all with very fondly remembered music tracks. Because of the Bitmap Brothers' willingness to draft in musicians like Richard Joseph, and another famous synth veteran who you got to meet was John Fox, who you mentioned. Why don't you tell us about your meeting with him, Ravi?
When I first heard Gods and Into the Wonderful, and also Speedball 2, I'd just heard them on the Amiga, and I thought, oh, these are cool pumping tunes, and I'd never known any kind of connection with the synth world. I was a massive synth pop fan, and I used to absolutely love anything from Sheffield, really. And the Human League are just, oh God, they're one of the greatest bands with Phil Oakley as the singer. And I went to see them in Nottingham at Rock City, and there was this old dude with the most heavy industrial sound you've ever heard, like hardcore synth, and everyone was there screaming, Foxy, Foxy, and he was on support. And I went over and said hi, and he'd done Into the Wonderful under a name Electrophere, and you can actually get the album Electrophere at the moment, and it has more songs that he's made, but using that same sample set of Gods, and it just is a really nice example of a kind of synth tune being put into a computer and how that can work. And I ended up getting obsessed with John Fox, listened to all his albums, his new stuff, and he actually lectures at a university in London, and I think he has the biggest collection of synthesizers in the world. They're all in his basement, and he's just surrounded by synths and all the original, modular sequencers and everything. It's very impressive.
Well, the Amiga music is clearly very important to you, Ravi. Did you ever try your hand at making your own music and emulating people like John Fox on your Amiga?
Yeah, I tried making music, but it was mainly kind of me playing There's No Limit in different ways and kind of speeding that up and down, just fiddling around with mods. I kind of got to understand them a lot more, but I'm still not the best mod maker myself. I did have a little sampler on my Amiga.
Yeah, did you go through that phase of listening to your CDs and trying to find those bits of music that were isolated from the rest of the music, so you could just sample that one bit of drum that stood out without background music, or that synth that was on its own in the break? Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you remember, we used to have some CDs called like the BBC sound effects CDs.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And there was like a series of them, and I remember there was this one of a cat trying to spit. That was like one of the funniest things you'd ever heard. And we'd always like use the cat spitting samples on tracks.
And the thing is, once you get your ear in, once you start ripping mods out of games and listening to the instruments that they've got, you then start to hear those same samples in other games. And all of the professionals were ripping each other off and taking each other's samples for their soundtracks.
Also, a lot of the Amiga games, you could just put the discs in and find the samples on there, .iff ones, and you could just drag them out and import them. It was very easy to copy people's samples and play about.
Well, Gods came out in 91. The Chaos Engine was 93. That's another one with a stonking soundtrack. But we are quickly now moving past the Amiga's heyday. I know you said that you hung on to the Amiga a lot longer than most people. But Amiga aside, we're going into the mid-90s. What were you doing with your life at this point, Ravi?
Mid-90s, I was still pursuing my kind of DJing dream, but I'd started to get into technical theatre, so I was on a lot of productions doing kind of sound engineering, lighting, pyrotechnics as well, which was so much fun. We pretty much got free roam of Nottingham Council's theatre department, so we'd have the armoury, which would involve blank firing guns. We had pyrotechnics where we'd hook them up to batteries, and we had these big toy Smurfs. We used to just fill with pyros and blow up in the air outside, all in the name of research. And we'd do stuff like read the phone book end to end, and then like record people doing that, and then remix it and put weird voice filters through there and contact mics on shopping trolleys and stuff. It was great fun.
Speaking of pyrotechnics, Ravi, you've had Andy Crane recently on your RetroHour podcast, and it was a great interview. But I remember Andy Crane once showed a fireworks display program for the Amiga. This was on Bad Influence. I don't know if you remember that review.
I don't actually, no.
But did you ever incorporate the Amiga into your theatre work for the pyrotechnics or anything like that?
No, but later on, what kind of led to me doing the Retro Hour and having a kind of huge amount of contacts was my dad did a video game festival. So he was an artist, and he loves working with film. So he kind of did a thing called Screenplay, which showed the link between film and video games, and had the early machinima stuff there. And we used all Amigas there to do the announcements on big screens, and we'd have Scala with the Genlock in the background, and we'd have, coming up in this room 4, you've got this at this time, and we had that all running off, some of the videos in the background would run off like DV tape going into it and stuff. It was pretty impressive, but I do remember seeing a magazine back in the days, and some guy had managed to hook up his Amiga with infrared switches to control his entire house. So it was like opening the curtains, turning the toaster on and answering the door, all of this stuff.
Ravi, as Neil mentioned, we're moving out of, Amiga territory now. But just before we do, it sounds like, you're a very practical person, and you have all these practical interests in your day job at the time. Were you ever interested in the hardware of your Amiga? Did you do any mods or upgrades?
Yes, once I understood it. So I spent a few years wrecking computers and kind of plugging like Zorro 1 slots into Zorro 2 and just, totally playing about with them because they'd kind of been abandoned by my dad. He'd moved on to PC, so he just gave me, I think it was 4 Amiga 4000s, 2 Amiga 2000s. It was a huge collection, so I just sat there kind of working them out. And Amigas are really good for that because you could be really brutal with them and they'd still survive, unlike the PCs, which just go really quickly. Amiga, I'd managed to develop this, I think they called it like cheese grater knuckle or something, as you were getting stuff out of the back of the Amiga and scraping along the bad solder joints.
So you, like me, obviously look back at the Amiga with a lot of fondness. Do you remember being particularly sad about its passing?
I was furious. I wasn't sad, I was angry. I was really angry at PC users, but I was also really angry at Amiga itself. I remember me and my dad turned up to the World of Amiga event, and we wanted to buy the Power PC cards, and there was lots of serious people there that had big money to buy kind of these cards, and we turned up and Petro was flogging a Get Boinged CD on the floor saying, "Buy my CD," and we're like, God, is this it now? And I remember the whole train on the way there was full of Amiga people, and they were all just laughing about how crap it was. And
Petra being the CEO of Amiga.
Escom bought it, yeah. Because even before David Pleasance, like, I'd given up on it by then as a commercial thing. Even when the CD32 was announced, paid no attention to that really, because we were interested in the high-powered ones, like the 4000 and the 3000. And it already started after the 3000. In the 4000 they put IDE in instead of SCSI. That really annoyed a lot of professional video makers. But I think if I'd gone to the PC scene, I'd probably would have just been playing rubbish games and not been forced to be creative, which is kind of what I like with the Amiga at the end. I was bodging stuff together to kind of read rich text documents and stuff.
Well, those Amiga days did come to an end for you, Ravi, and you begrudgingly moved on to the PC, which is where the next track comes from. So why don't you introduce that for us?
So this is when I kind of knew that the PC was going to take over. And this is especially when I was playing Warcraft. And this was like real-time strategy, but it was so good. They had samples of people speaking and saying funny things, and it was fantastic. And the soundtrack was great.
So Ravi, strategic games, real-time strategy and the like, they're kind of a grown-up game, and that's not to say they couldn't work on the old Amiga platforms, but there was definitely a big distinction of sort of starting to require PCs. So at this point in your life, you're a PC owner. How did that PC ownership start?
It was my mum had actually kind of later on said, right, we've got to get a PC. She was into MS-DOS and doing all the word processing and stuff. So I think it was Time Computer that we bought one from. There was a lot of these third-party PC vendors everywhere at the time. So we got a fairly cheap machine. And that was kind of the first opening up to real-time strategy. And there'd been stuff on the Amiga before, but the whole atmosphere of these real-time strategy games changed because you had the intro, you had the characters had speech, you had music in the background as well. You know, often on the older systems, it would either be music or sound effects. You know, there wasn't the combination of both. And the places were much bigger, like Populous. When you'd be playing that, you'd be scrolling in a little tiny box. But, you know, Warcraft, you'd just be absolutely everywhere. And one of my favourite titles, actually, on Windows 3.1 was Sim Tower. I absolutely loved that game. It was fantastic kind of management, and I loved the whole Sim and Maxis kind of stuff. Also A-Train. I don't know if you ever played A-Train.
Yeah, that was a Maxis title. I was really into Transport Tycoon. Well, Railroad Tycoon first, and then I was completely hooked on Transport Tycoon. I don't know if you played that one.
No, I've not played that one, but I do remember Theme Park as well, obviously, being another big strategy game.
What was the hospital one, Ravi? Do you remember that one? Was it Theme Hospital?
Oh, yes, Theme Hospital. That was one of my favourite games. Yeah, that was great. It was kind of like all the Amiga developers had just jumped and gone onto the PC, and then these beautiful titles started coming out.
Was that Bullfrog?
Yeah.
Theme Hospital. Yeah, so they really were Amiga developers, weren't they, that had come across, and you had things like Bloaty Head Syndrome.
Yeah, and oh god, there was some really good stuff. I used to love, especially if you got into the later levels, they'd have a helicopter land, and then they'd have like 20 people come out with Bloaty Head Syndrome, and you have to deal with them like really quickly, and you have to have your whole kind of thing set up like a factory, really, and you get these special guests as well, and you'd have to keep your staff happy. They'd always have like little Mardis, and it'd be like, oh, am I gonna give this guy a raise, or am I just gonna sack him because he's being annoying? It's a really good game.
So Ravi, I can think of a lot of titles. At the time you had Dungeon Keeper.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
Amazing powerhouses. But I'd like to just wind back a little bit. You mentioned Sim Tower, and I think that's probably one of the most underrated titles out there.
It is, and I just loved how you could upgrade each little section and how certain things would affect. Like if you had a poorer family in one area that were being really loud, then that'd affect the other residents, and the area would kind of go down, or you'd have a certain shop that got popular and another area didn't, and escalators would get overflowed and stuff. It was really well thought out, and who would have thought making a tower? You couldn't think of more of a boring concept than that.
Well, they certainly came up with a few potentially more boring. Do you remember Sim Ant?
Sim Ant, yeah. Did they have Sim Brick at one time? So, I remember. What was there? Sensible Train Spotting as well. I think that was
and someone recently, Ravi, I was just actually on the internet yesterday looking. Someone has actually made a programming language tutorial. So this is to teach you to program in Java, and it's pretty much the entire lift simulation engine from Sim Tower.
Oh wow!
And you can actually the challenges. So it's a challenge, and it says like get 30 people to their floors in 30 seconds. And people actually have to code using the API in JavaScript to do that. It's brilliant.
That's great though. It's amazing how powerful Java is. The fact that all of these old systems and everything, you can pretty much run them in your browser now.
That's right. And did you ever sort of dabble in the coding side yourself?
Yeah, definitely. So when I was doing a lot of this web uploading and stuff, I was also building huge communities online, and that was always a thing I loved to do. I kind of started off, actually learned from the back of computer magazines how to do HTML, and then went into WHTML, which was like the WAP version, and then later on I got into CSS and JavaScript and PHP when the Macs came out and stuff. I started using a Mac back then to learn CSS. It was really good, and I still do development quite a lot professionally today.
I didn't know this aspect, Ravi. We'll have to think of that. We might have some questioning about that later.
Sure. It was a fan site for a TV show called The Tribe, which was on Channel 5, which was the most expensive kids TV show in history.
I was going to say that did us ring a bell. Was it one of those ones where kids are doing challenges, running around on like pirate ship type things?
Yeah, it was like before Power Rangers, and it was made Australian people had made it, and it was like about society had died and all the adults had died and there was just kids left on skateboards.
Sounds like Mad Max.
Yeah.
Mad Max on skateboards.
Yeah, but this was a TV series and they were spending, I think, about like 51 million on each season. So it was crazy. And Channel 5 picked it up when they first started. So I made a huge community site for that.
So, Ravi, with all these sim games and business simulators that we used to play on the PC, I often wonder, perhaps it sort of primed a generation in a way for everything from just personal budgeting to maybe running their own businesses. I don't know how you feel about that, but it's always been something that I've thought. We had this kind of weird business education through gaming in the 90s.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean about because I hated football. Like, I quite like football now, but I hated it before. But I play the Football Manager Sims and kind of enjoy sacking people and the power of it. Yeah, it's weird. You're totally right. And I guess they were setting people up for the 90s, the early 2000s, where we went into IT and it was just learn Excel and all of that.
Yeah. No, by the end of the 90s, I was certainly a trained Formula One driver, tower builder, and railroad
flyer.
Fighter pilot. Yeah.
So, Ravi, what game do you feel, though, that you've sort of lost the most hours to out of all of those?
Out of all of those, oh God, I'd probably say Lemmings or Worms. All of them, but strategy-wise, oh God, probably Warcraft, most likely, yeah. I have not played World of Warcraft at all, or any of the modern ones, but the old real-time Warcraft, I love that.
So, Ravi, why don't you introduce your next track?
Yeah, so my next track is something totally different and unexpected, but this was Pokemon Red, and I absolutely love Pokemon. You know, it was kind of a craze, but I was a bit of a skater there, so I used to go around wearing Pokemon shirts before it was cool, you see. So this is the track.
But you know, my earliest memory, though, of Pokemon, Ravi, you'll laugh. It's, you know, from the Game Boy camera.
Yeah.
It used to have this sort of art package in it, and in there was these stamps you could use, and it was all these weird characters. And it turns out it was Pokemon because the same company made that camera.
Oh, because, yeah, you could have like little Pikachus and stuff on there, couldn't you, man?
Print them out on your little stickers.
Yeah.
I was at university at the time. What a bloody geek.
Yeah, you see, Pokemon, I was just about 16 or something.
That's still quite old.
Yeah, I've got no idea. I had a Tamagotchi, but I had nothing. I never got into Pokemon. Yeah.
Well, it was weird because Pokemon like came out and everybody got really obsessed with it, but they got obsessed with it in the wrong ways as far as I see it. They got obsessed with it playing card games at lunchtime, which was incredibly boring. They got obsessed with watching the cartoon on TV, which I didn't really like, but the game was absolutely fantastic. And I only had a little play of it on my mate's Game Boy, and I was like, this is a really, really, really good game. So I didn't own a Game Boy myself, so I dusted off the Amiga 4000 and got a ROM, and there was a Game Boy emulator, so I'd play it on this big CRT screen and a keyboard. The only person who played Pokemon at the keyboard.
So Ravi, for those of us though who don't really understand the mechanics, The battles to me seem to look like random. You sort of walk around and all of a sudden you're in a fight. When you choose your spells and things, say spells, right, or powers, is it sort of a dice roll at that point? Because if you conversely think of games like Advance Wars, which are similar but maybe a little bit more predictable in the outcomes, is it a random outcome or is it calculated?
At the beginning, it's more random because it's like, as you find those Pokemons, you've got to collect them all. So as you're walking around, you're just finding these and then you're getting into battles. And once you battle it, you can tame it and then put it inside your Pokeball. So if you're doing that at the very beginning, it is totally like random. But later on, as you get to know the Pokemons you own, you can start to use your own ones and then get that. But also there's a lot where it's like, is it worth getting this Pokemon? So you can just discard quite a few of them as well.
It sounds like a lot of game mechanics designed to sell lots and lots of cards.
Yeah, to sell also cards as well, because those trading cards, it was crazy at my school. I remember, they'd have all the stats of the Pokemons and people would be trying to outdo each other. I never got involved in that, though. I was a Pogs man.
And did you ever get caught up in the Pokemon Go craze a couple of years back?
I'm afraid to say I did, to the point that I used to wait for a guy to come home from work and he'd walk past and he'd just take all of my gyms. And I'd be like, and I'd be trying to look for him on the street, see who he was. And then I remember during the height of it, I kind of went out at about 2:00 in the morning outside my house to where the local Pokemon gym was. And I looked across the road and there was another girl and she was just playing and she turned around and she goes, "Blue team," and I was like, yeah. That was really weird. And I don't think I'd experienced that with any other kind of game.
It seemed to drop off very quickly, though. It was like a craze, but only for a matter of weeks, from what I can remember.
Yeah. But for like a week, it was mad, though. I remember there was this one spot on the local park, and there was like 3 Pokestops there, and there'd be 20, 30 people gathered out there, like businessmen and stuff. It was really strange. I don't think there's been a mobile game that's been that quite addictive. Yeah, they're saying they're making a Ghostbusters one. But I like that augmented reality stuff. I think that's really interesting. A new way of gaming.
Ravi, we mentioned in the intro that you're the co-host of the Retro Hour, and hopefully we can hear a bit more about your experiences there over the coming tracks. But while we're on the subject of Nintendo and Pokemon, have you had the opportunity to ever interview or meet anyone from Nintendo through the show?
Yes, we've had 2 people on through Nintendo, and it's incredibly hard to get people on from Nintendo because most of them are based in Japan, non-English speaking countries. But the studio that did a lot of stuff that was based in England, and actually quite locally, there's quite a few people based in Nottingham now, was rare. So we've had David Doak, who did GoldenEye, and we've had David Wise as well, who's done the Donkey Kong soundtrack. We've had actually Graham Norgate as well, and he did Killer Instinct and stuff. They all live locally as well, which is really nice. So for quite a few years, I've been doing events with David Doak and those guys. Yeah, and it's great. I'd love to get more Nintendo people on, but it's really hard, Hopefully some Nintendo USA people.
Ravi, why don't you introduce your next track?
Yeah, so this was kind of released in 1999, and it was Unreal Tournament. And this is the main loading screen, because this was the soundtrack of the late 90s for me. I would be sitting in my bedroom, 56k modem, dialing up and hearing this. Yes, so we were in a clan, and the kind of clan formed from our technical theatre group that we used to go to. And of course we were all geeks because we were in the technical theatre group. So we had a great teenager name, which was Death Kill Destroy, DKD. And we had a nice little clan, and we'd always come on and have a kind of fight. But the main thing was with Unreal Tournament was I'd played real-time strategy. I played around with Amigas and stuff, and I'd also started playing with PlayStations and stuff. Me and my dad did a video game event called Screenplay, and downstairs they had a thing called LAN Arena, which was like PCs. Now back then everyone had PCs, but they were like these ones bought from shops, third-party ones. They weren't powerful, and they weren't playing the new kind of games. So this is the first time I saw powerful PCs playing Unreal Tournament. I think Kingpin as well was one of the games at the time. Yeah, and maybe some StarCraft. I don't know if that was then that early on, but that was the first time I saw that, and I was amazed, like the headshots that you could do, and just playing in a LAN, and stuff like the grappling hook mods is my first introduction to rocket jumping, and it was my first real online play as well. 56k modem, you could still have a decent match on it. It was really good fun.
The music that you chose there, you would be listening to that while studying the ping numbers on all the hosts to choose which server to go into, wouldn't you?
Yep. That was definitely it, because ping may not mean so much nowadays, but back then it was like, oh my god. And we'd get our mate Marcus to host the server closest to us as possible in Nottingham, so that we could get the best ping for our clan. We played a few clans. We mainly just installed mods on the server, like backflip and all this kind of stuff, and then would run around trying to be like in the Matrix.
I love the idea of a theatre group based clan. I've just got a vision of like Michael Gambon's voice coming over the mic while you're trying to one shot him.
Well, I'll go a bit more into the theatre group actually, because the theatre group was kind of my birth of the internet. So we had, even if you look on the Wayback Machine now, we had a website called generals.co.uk, and my mate would be selling backup CDs. So you could, write to him and he'd send you a backup CD. And we also had a thing called the, Nottingham Pyrotechnic Theatre Appreciation Society. And it was just pictures of different explosives and pyrotechnics that we'd been using in theatre. And because it was called generals.co.uk, this was really early on, we used to get lots of American generals going on there.
You don't know nothing, boys.
Yeah, and commenting on the pyrotechnics like, oh, that's a good one. So we'd basically hang with my theatre group online. That would be my first group of people that I went online with. And we all knew each other locally, so it'd be great. We could go around each other's houses and kind of do clan matches there, taking a turn side by side and stuff.
I think, Ravi, that was the golden age, wasn't it, really? When people started getting together. Did you also indulge in LAN play with your team?
No, but as we talk later on, we will get into some heavy LAN play.
Heavy LAN play.
Heavy LAN play.
Talking about the weight of his CRT monitor.
Yeah, I forgot all about that lugging. And I had a 20-inch. I was like look at my 20-inch. What a moron.
Let's just stay on clans for a moment. Andrew, were you ever in a clan?
I was in a clan, but I was actually more into a clan in MechWarrior. And I'm trying to think which version. I think it was MechWarrior 4, which is about the same time, and Combat Flight Simulator.
Oh, that's cool.
It was called... I was in a wing, because it was Combat Flight Simulator. You had a wing. And you all had these military titles within the wing itself. So one of you would be the training officer, one would be the thing, and you actually had to do it. You had roles. Did you ever have any roles, Ravi?
Not in this clan, but later on I played Habbo Hotel, which was a really early kind of online chat room, and a lot of Anonymous and 4chan would hang there. That was a place where they did their first actions, and we had a Soviet Union clan, and I remember being in the Communist Party division, and we had like a propaganda war. It was insane. We had like websites and stuff, and we were publishing against other clans, like big manifestos and stuff. It was insane. Yeah.
It was serious stuff, though, wasn't it? I mean, you did challenge each other, didn't you?
Yeah, and that was the thing. You'd publicly make sites, and people would like talk about the drama between the clans, and it's because the internet was really small then. Even though there was these big titles and big services, like the internet was tiny. Like all the troublemakers were in one place, all the good guys were in another, you know.
And even today, I think people still have this sort of clan mentality, but they've taken it to the next level. There are people who play these flight simulator games where they're not even flying the plane; they're actually in the control tower, and they just go and do like 5 hours a day of it.
Well, we used to have in this Habbo Hotel game, we used to have door blockers. So their job was to stand and be a door for like 6 hours. Someone came up, what's the password? Then they move and let them in until they ranked up. You know?
I remember in the dial-up days, I used to play Ultima Online a lot. And I used to just play it on my own. But one day I got invited to a clan. So I thought, I'll go and see what this is all about. And I turned up at the arranged time, 8 p.m. on a Monday, the clan meets. And all they did for 3 hours was marching practice. So you were just clicking your mouse to try and stay in line with the other guys and march. I was like, oh, I think I lasted about 30 minutes before I started casting spells on them.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Neil, I think you're more of a griefer, and I can see you getting into Minecraft now just to cause mischief.
Well, that's just standard clan activity. If you get into the roleplay clans, now that's a whole new world of hell. So, yeah, we used to play Vice City online. There was kind of a mod in there where you could... they'd left some code in there, Rockstar had originally, because they wanted an online function. So Multi-Theft Auto was created, which was one of the first kind of online functions for it. And we used to play, and we used to have 50 people in the city, you know, a police force, mayor with mayoral elections, and street parties, and it was great. A guy who would just like sell curtains all day and stuff. It was really good.
Did you adopt a character, Ravi?
Yes, I was a slick guy. I can't even remember my name. We'd even have fake names, you know.
You mentioned Unreal Tournament. That was 1999. What was Ravi doing when he wasn't playing computer games?
I think 1999. I was still in the theatre group, but I'd kind of got employed by the council then, and I was doing theatre shows with them. But I was also actually doing my dream of being cool and appearing on pirate radio. So the UK garage scene had come out by then, so I was one of these like awful MCs in a crew that would do, you know, shout out and bowl and all of that stuff. And we made a remix of Ghostbusters, because like remixes at the time, like Casualty was a really big one and stuff like that. So we only got played once on the local radio, but that was great. You know, I remember we were at a house party and I'd get everyone outside at the party and said, "Listen, I'm on the pirate radio," and then played it full blast on a little ghetto blaster. It was good.
So moving on from dial-up gaming, Ravi, 2000 was the year that DSL became available in the UK. So we started to slowly get broadband. I think it was 500k broadband at first, if I remember rightly. But it was a big jump, and it made services like YouTube and other content platforms available to us. When did you get into that? And was it with YouTube first, or were you podcasting first? Can you remember when you started sharing your content?
Well, Dan and me kind of, we started this thing of getting drunk every weekend and going out clubbing, and then ending up at his home shouting really loud till about 6 a.m, playing on Amigas and C64s, and just chatting about computers and drinking lots of Jack Daniels. So we decided, wouldn't this be cool if we recorded it? But also another amazing thing happened, which was when we went to Amsterdam, and there was Marvin and Marcel, who are some really amazing guys over in the Netherlands, and they kind of took us to Amiga 30, which was, I've been going to all these Amiga events, and for years they'd been empty and no one had been there, but Amiga 30 was like, what? There's guys with Ferraris outside. The original guys came back, so they had, RJ Michael there and Dave Haney and all of these guys. So we got to talk to them and we thought, wow, if these guys are this easy to access, why don't we put it out? And Dan actually suggested doing the podcast and said, why don't we go for it? Because we'd put videos out there with RJ and Dave Haney and no one had really listened. And then we put the podcast out and instantly got about 7,000 listens straight away. So we decided to go with it. And actually, for me, it's been a lot more successful than my YouTube channel was.
And who's involved in the Retro Hour? It's obviously you and Dan. Is there anyone else involved?
Yeah, so we've got me and Dan, and then we've got Joe Fox as well. And we brought Joe in because he's our mate, and he's basically Sega and Nintendo guy. And our knowledge is really bad on that, so it's good to get Joe in. But also we have James as well, who's our manager agent at the moment, and he's works with Dan for a long time. Dan's a professional radio broadcaster, and James kind of is just a fan of the show and wants to help us grow it and make it a bit more professional, which is good.
So when you say professional, I mean, it in terms of editing and the quality, it sounds very professional. Is that something that you do yourselves, or do you outsource that?
Well, Dan's lucky enough to be a professional radio guy, so he gets us access to a proper studio with a phone-in line and multi-band processors and all this kind of stuff, and really nice microphones. So luckily we've been able to, we haven't messed the studio up yet, so we've been able to use that for all of the podcasts so far. And Dan's level of editing, he really enjoys it, and it's just so good because he's professional DJ and everything. I'm
looking forward to hearing a lot more about the Retro Hour, but why don't you introduce your next track and then we'll carry on from there.
Yeah, so this next track is Hell March from Command & Conquer by the fantastic Frank Kelpaki. That was Hell March from Command & Conquer Red Alert, which was released in 1996, but the series ran from the original in 95 through to Tiberian Alliances in 2013, and no doubt the franchise will continue. Now, you should be pretty good at this, Ravi, considering you used to play the UK champion. Why don't you tell us about that? Yeah, so I was absolutely obsessed with Command & Conquer from the first one that came out all the way to... Well, I wasn't such a fan of the Tib stuff, Tiberian stuff, but all the way up to Generals, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. At university, we used to have a LAN, and we used to play Red Alert 2, and often the matches would go on till the sun was rising in the morning. So we'd start at 10 o'clock that night and not realise it was 6 or 7 in the morning. We'd all be playing on separate rooms, but networked in the house. And I just remember a great day when my friend built thousands of Korean jets, and he didn't have a spy at the back, so I just ran round with Tanya and blew up everything. That was great. But as I kind of got older, one of my mates was absolutely obsessed with Command and Conquer, and he became one of the UK champions. And he used to do this move called drafting, where you'd buy a tower, sell a tower, buy a tower, sell a tower. So you got 2 troops every time you did that. And he'd do that as soon as he started. So he would have amassed an army by the time you've built a power plant or you've kind of done something. So we used to play this game, who can survive the quickest against Harry? And we'd sit there and, you know, I think I got up to 5 minutes was my biggest, and that was building massive fortifications, you know, everything to stop him coming through.
And I think that when you used to play it among friends, because you had in the gameplay itself, you had these periods of resource gathering, and then maybe sending out people to scope the maps, and then little skirmishes, and then always at the end there was this massive battle.
Yeah, I think Command and Conquer was totally unique because it had those cutscenes, those really cheesily acted cutscenes where you had, like, you know, the evil commie on one side, and then you had the kind of allied on the other side, and the music as well was just insane. So there's a guy, you need to look him up, which is Franco Placchi, and he's the guy who wrote the Command and Conquer music. Now, he has a guitar that's like Prince, but just kind of, you know, crazy angles coming off it. And if you look for the live Command and Conquer performances, he does like Hell March live with a band, and it is just so cool.
You have to remember, the soundtrack was always accompanied by the sound of a double-speed spinning CD-ROM drive whirring up next to you.
Yeah. And construction complete. That would be it.
It's not just Command and Conquer really as well. I was speaking last night actually in a live stream about a game called Stronghold. We've started getting into a game called Stronghold. I don't know if you've played it. It was about like Age of Empires. And Peter Lee, NostalgiaNet, he said in that Stronghold he felt was like one of the best in that genre and never has sort of been beaten.
I have to say I agree. I remember playing an awful lot of the first Stronghold. I haven't played any more of the series. Stronghold scared the living daylights out of me because I think it was 2001 it came out. So I was just on broadband, and it must have had some kind of connectivity to the game because it took your name, it went out to the internet and found a sound file of your name, and then when you next loaded the game, it would say, "Greetings, Lord Neil," or whatever your name was. And it just scared the crap out of me.
Neil, I love that you're telling this story because I told exactly the same one today because I've jumped out of my skin. Yeah. Welcome, Lord Andrew. I'm so glad someone else had that experience.
The worrying thing about these real-time strategy games is they're so well suited to loot boxes, aren't they? And pay-per-play. You know, it's all stats-based and you can just throw money at increasing the stats.
Yeah. Maybe they've been replaced by these tappy kind of iPad things, you know, but I don't know. I still have that urge for setting off the nukes.
You need a mouse, don't you? You need a mouse and maybe a keyboard, and we don't play with those.
And we're not even going to go into my Civilization obsession because that's another one that's horrific. Yeah.
I think the first multiplayer real-time strategy game I played was Settlers on the Amiga, the first Settlers. And I don't know if you remember, you could plug 2 mice in,
yeah,
and it would split the screen. So you could both play with a mouse each at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh.
I also remember Colonization was a really early one.
Yeah.
That I loved. That was a real-time, well, very slow time strategy game.
So, Ravi, you've had some astonishing guests on the Retro Hour, and I don't include myself in that statement. Who've been some of the highlights for you?
Oh, God. You know, it's amazing. I'm going to have to get the list up, aren't I? People that I've had on, because there's so many, and it's just been amazing when we've got responses from people as well. And the amount of people that have helped us out. You know, we've had Paul Jury from Retro Gamers really helped us out, but also Scene World Podcast as well. They've really helped us get people like Nolan Bushnell, you know. It was just mind-blowing to have on, but I'd say for me, actually, one of the biggest one was having Ben Herms from Amiga Format. because he told us all about the stuff that was going on in the background, which was like that they had Amiga OS 5 already developed. They saw ARM versions of it, and he really, if you listen to that interview, he really tells you the story of kind of how he went home one day and just collapsed on the bed and knew that it was all over, and his kind of whole life went. And that was amazing as well, because I've always seen his face, you know, on those little icon folders on the Amiga format CDs. Oh, it's Ben. And just, I think Gary Penn as well was just amazing to talk to, because I love the original GTA, and just having his name as a cheat, you know, that's always kind of stuck with me. But also, I guess there's, oh God, there's so many. Like Al Lowe I loved as well.
Oh, Al Lowe of Leisure Suit Larry fame.
Yeah, because Al Lowe, he's done Leisure Suit Larry, but he's also done a lot of other titles. And I think it was Police Quest that was part of one of his. And I love that because that was so accurate. And we've hardly had anyone who did like Sierra stuff, or, you know, those kind of American titles. And I really love them.
I follow Al Lowe on Twitter, and I have to say his humour hasn't changed since the early Leisure Suit Larry days.
Ravi, with all these sort of big names, and you must be, you know, sending out emails and using contacts, has there anybody who's sort of kind of turned you down or not got back to you who you really would love to get on the show?
Yeah, there's a couple of people. One's Dominic Diamond, for obvious reasons. We'd love to get him on, but he doesn't seem to want to talk about the old video game days. And another person is Ken Silverman. Ken Silverman wrote the engine for, you know, Duke Nukem 3D, the one that was used on all of the titles like Redneck Rampage, Shadow Warrior, and he actually wrote that when he was like 14. And he wrote Ken's Labyrinth, that was the original one, and then John Romero helped him develop it into Ken's build engine, and it's just absolutely fantastic, the development. But he doesn't like audio interviews. I'd love to maybe do a written one with him one day.
And I think that there's a whole load of interesting backstory, isn't there? Because I think there was, you know, they were a group and then they split into two separate groups, and there's all sorts of stuff went on.
Yeah. I think it was the same engine, yeah. Because the build engine was so well built that actually you can get the original Duke Nukem and you can put 24-bit Polymost textures onto it using Ken's original build engine.
Oh, I loved the build engine. We used to make Duke Nukem maps because there was a great level editor with Duke Nukem.
Yeah.
And we used to make maps and just take them around to each other's houses on discs.
Because it introduced stacking sectors and all of that stuff that just didn't exist in first-person shooters before.
You mentioned Sierra earlier. Have you tried to get, for example, is it Roberta Williams, who wrote a lot of those early Sierra games?
Yeah. We've tried to get Roberta on. It's hard with quite a few people with contacts as well, because quite a few people aren't actually present on the internet, so you have to get it through a colleague or something like this. But we realised at the moment, me and Dan, we've been doing this for two and a half years now. Our kind of knowledge is running out of people that we want on the show. We've got all of the guys. So on Discord, we have a show suggestions page, and people have been putting in guests that they want on there. And actually, we're getting most of our guests from there now. So it's more being listener-led than us guys doing it. And it's really good, actually, because we're learning a lot now.
Isn't there, there's always the option of asking, is it Heavy Metal Jesus? Didn't he
Metal
work
Jesus
for,
rocks.
Yeah, I've asked Metal Jesus. He just needs to get back to me. Yeah, I'd love to have him on. He's very interesting. I love his channel.
And he was in a game. I can't remember the name of the game, but it was a multimedia title with full motion video, and he was cast as a heavy metal rocker in one of Sierra's horror games. I
never knew that. I can imagine it. He's quite a big dude, isn't he? So, yeah.
So what about embarrassing moments, Ravi? Have you ever made a faux pas with a guest on the show, or had any funny situations that didn't make the edit?
Well, we've had the show where we recorded the whole show and then we realised we weren't recording it.
That happens.
That was the bad one. And we've had everybody's system as well. So the problem is when you're ringing up people, you're doing like international calls over phone lines and stuff. everybody on a different phone package, stuff like that. So we had this, oh God, I can't remember who it was with, but it was awful. Every 6 minutes, the phone call disconnected. And we were ringing LA. So we had to keep conducting this interview. And then Dan would go, 6 minutes, and then we'd hang up, and then right back, and then have to try and get back into the flow in that 6 minutes as well. So I think that was a nightmare for him to edit.
Do you find it if something happens like that, and you've messed up the recording, and you say, right, everybody, we're going to have to start again, do you find either it goes very well because they've already done it a second time, or is it more the case that you've lost the spontaneity? What do you find happens?
I think it goes a lot better because it's kind of like you've run through it, but it might sound a bit more clinical. But luckily, everybody in the video games world are really nice. Like, I reckon if we did this in the music industry, we'd have some absolutely awful people. But everybody's really happy to talk, and they just, a lot of people, they don't believe that what they've done is worthy of people listening to it, and it's absolutely crazy. You have to convince guys, you're like, you made Lemmings, or and they don't get it. They're like, oh no, surely no one wants to listen to this.
You mentioned you have a manager, Ravi, so obviously part of his job is to dig up opportunities for you and Dan and everyone else. What kind of opportunities have come out of the Retro Hour podcast for you?
Oh, I'd say so many opportunities, so many. It's been amazing, and I think it's because the retro gaming community has embraced us. What we tried to do was make sure it wasn't put into a category of just an Amiga cast, because we could have very easily done that because we love it so much, but we decided to, make the conversation wider, and that's led to us working with replay events and all the play events. Dan hadn't been to a retro game show ever, and then I eventually took him to one. He's like, oh my god, he goes every year now, and now we've got to host panels there. We've had national press with stuff, and it's just amazing the nice things that people say to you and contact you. I've been in a bar before just drinking, and someone's turned around and gone, are you Ravi from the Retro Hour? I'm like, what? And it's just crazy.
Ravi, then, before you take us on your journey into DJing, can you introduce your next track?
Yeah, so my next track is Professional Tracker by Hoffman, and Hoffman is the kind of leading guy in 8-bit modular music at the moment. He's helped develop some software called PT1210 so you can mix it, and this tune was made for Revision, so it's actually got like a rap about Amiga, and it's really cool.
Professional tracker, progressive pattern hacker, 31 samples of dirty subject matter. We got that Amiga vision. Better bring your homework, boy, cause this is revision. Professional tracker, progressive pattern hacker, 31 samples of dirty subject matter. We got that Amiga vision. Better bring your homework, boy, cause this is revision. Rocking all night to that pattern skank, digging deep in the sample bank. Can't leave nothing blank. Trample the tracks like a battle tank. Roll tracking in our sleep like androids counting. 64 electric sheep. You can find us in the demo scene, proud and raw. Surrounded by Amigas and 64s. 1-bit, 2-bit, 3-bit more. 7-bit, 8-bit, no more. We be making a play with AB projects at 64K. Main aim to win the day. Get chopping, head bobbing, bag 'em up, never stopping, track smashing, noise catching, get the beat cracking. One more thing left before you go cracker. To the hackers, good visions of pro trackers.
This track brings us all the way up to recent months when you did something very special involving a couple of Amigas. Why don't you tell us about that, Ravi?
Well, since those days of kind of playing with no limit at home and speeding them up, I got really into DJing and like beat matching with vinyl. And I always thought, like, the Amiga mods, you could DJ with them, right? Because they're just normal tunes. The only thing is you can't change the tempos on the fly. Now, Hoffman created this amazing software, so you can now change the tempos on the fly. You can loop certain sections. You can even do time stretching, I think. And you can take certain sections of the samples out and bring them in. So I've been using this for about 2 or 3 years and started DJing on it and live streaming on Facebook on the RetroHour page. And we were getting like 16k reach on that and stuff, which was absolutely insane. So I work at an art gallery in Nottingham Contemporary, and they had DJ Yoda, who was doing a video games event, and I'd previously DJ'd this Amiga music at All Your Bass Festival with the guy who did Prapper the Rapper as well. He was down there, Rob Hubbard was down there, David Wise, all of those guys. So then I said, I can DJ, and I do it on old school computers. So they were like, cool, we need a support for Yoda. So basically I was like, wow. And also my my boss there had come to the previous gig and seen me there, so he was like, yeah, he's good. And then we hooked it up to the sound system, and we got the output of the video of the Amigas and managed to put them on projectors so people could see in real time what I was doing on the screens. And then I performed in front of about 300 people DJing, which has just been a dream for me. Just to hear it on the sound system in a big venue was good enough. I would have been happy with that. But people dancing to it and drinking and even clapping at the end, I was just like, yeah, amazing.
Yeah, it was a great set. It's actually on YouTube, the full set, and I really enjoyed watching it. So we'll include a link to that in the show notes. And it seemed to be really well received. As you said, people were clapping at the end. When they spoke to you after the set, did they want to speak to you specifically about the Amigas, or were they superfluous to the music itself?
I think it's weird because there's two kind of sections. There's like the mod music, which is what the hyper geeks have heard, you know. And then there's the general public that just see 8-bit music as like blips and blops and stuff like this. And I think it was the general public were more astonished with the sound that it could produce. You know, they were like, oh, someone's DJing with a Commodore Amiga. Oh, it's going to be do-do-do-do. You know, it's not going to be hardcore jungle. This kind of music. So they seem really impressed with it. And this has led to a lot of people saying, can Ravi do a set on the podcast, or can you do this live? So what I'm actually doing is I'm launching my own podcast. Now this is going to be once a month, and it's going to be called the 8-Bit Mix Show. So this is kind of to appeal to everyone, but all the music's going to be done in a bit rate of 8-bit, which always sounds awesome. And I'll be live streaming it on Twitch and also pumping it out to SoundCloud and stuff. So it'll just be a mix a month in a different genre, and we might get guests on there and stuff like that.
Ravi, would you consider running one of your live DJ sets from the cave one day, perhaps?
A rave in the cave, of course.
Absolutely.
That sounds marvellous.
Excellent. Well, we'll talk about that for sure.
Yeah. And the thing is as well, with it, you can pick any genre, because all these mods people made thousands and thousands of tunes that were all on floppy disk, unheard by the public, and they're all in different styles. There's like even Amiga reggae. It's like so many Amiga jazz. You could have a whole jazz night.
So you could almost just dig out, you know, when you root through a box of old public domain discs you bought on a car boot sale or eBay, and just you find all these weird mods, don't you?
Yeah, so there's this one site, it's called Exotica, and there's also Modland. Now, Modland is the biggest FTP in the world for video game music. So every single video game music piece that was out there is on there. And they'll be in the formats. So they'll have like David Whittaker's stuff will be in .dw, which was his own special David Whittaker format. They'll also have Sega Mega Drive music. They'll have Game Boy music. But they also have all the Pro Tracker mods on there. So if you search for Exotica Modland search, then that's a web interface. So you can kind of search for all these tunes. And through years, I've been searching through and categorizing them. That's why when I mix, it sounds so nice, because I've put them in the same kind of rate, beat rate, BPM, and also I've picked certain styles. Whereas
it's like you've got your vinyl records all lined up in the right sections in your box.
Yeah, exactly. and when you hear a lot of the old 8-bit music, it's usually the top 40 tunes that everyone says is amazing. And that they're always kind of played on a loop.
Do you need anything special just to hook up, your old Amiga? If someone at home's got one and they want to hook it up to their hi-fi or some speakers, do they need any special hardware?
Nothing special at all. The Amiga has PCM, which was kind of an audio standard that was introduced, which means that it works very well on huge sound systems, but also home ones. One thing that I have to do to adapt it is the output is in mono on each ear. So if you're DJing, it means you've got 2 tracks in one ear, which are separate, and 2 tracks in the other, which really, really, really confuses things. But a lot of people don't know that if you plug a phono Y splitter into the left Amiga output, it basically combines the audio through just the left channel.
So what are some of the challenges that you're up against that maybe a regular DJ doesn't have to deal with? You've talked about the stereo separation there. Yeah, what else do you have to deal with?
Because I'm using in-car entertainment units as the kind of display. I have to often worry about them kind of breaking because I've wired them up myself.
How do you mean in-car entertainment units?
So, you're sitting in a car and the kids have like a little LCD screen on the back of the seat.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, those are the things, cheap ones from eBay. So I've bought them and kind of hacked out the power supplies for them and converted them so the Amigas run on them. Another thing is I've got them recapped. I've got everything done on them nicely, and they still crash. They will still crash with this software, but luckily not when the tune's playing. So you get a big nice guru message coming up on the screen. Carrying them round as well as an arse as well, because they're huge, and those power supplies are like huge bricks, aren't they?
Yeah. Is it Amiga 1200s that you're using?
1200s, yeah. I tried with the 600s, but there was a small... I think there's something where they used something with the audio filtering there. Cheap capacitors or something. And sometimes the mods don't loop correctly on the 600 version. I don't know if that's to do with the software or the hardware. But I could use 500s, but they're even bigger, aren't they?
I guess there's always the option of emulating, but it just wouldn't be right, would it?
No. It's weird because I've done gigs before, and there's been these guys with all these modern tractor setups and synced computers and stuff, and they're all standing there and they're like, I've got a buzz, how do I get rid of this buzz? Or this isn't syncing correctly, and there's always something wrong because there's so many points of failure. But with the Amiga, it's just playing a mod off a disc. It's like it's pretty solid actually, for DJing on. Pretty reliable.
Well, it clearly works for you, Ravi, and I'm looking forward to that live stream that you're going to be doing. Do you have any other projects on the go that you'd like to make us aware of?
So another thing that I'll be doing is I'll be going to my first demo party. And I've never been to a demo party in my life. I've always been to the computer shows, but never a demo party. And I'm actually going with the legendary Hoffman. And that's called Nova.
Oh, that's down in Devon, isn't it, that one?
Down in Devon, yeah. So I'm going to have my Amiga strapped to my back and my monitor.
And now I looked at going to this one, and I got the impression that it's sort of a really hardcore demo party where they're all lined up with their computers and coding at the party. Is that right? Or have I got that completely
is
right?
Exactly what it is. It's basically, what do you call it, Amiga Music Training Camp. And it's going to be 3 days. They have a live coding competition. But Hoffman advised me if you code your songs before, then you can actually have some fun on the weekend. It's like, yeah, I might do that instead.
Ravi, you now have 2 important decisions to make before we leave you on Retro Island. You can pick only one of the 8 tracks you've shared with us today to keep you company. Which will it be?
I think it'll be the Unreal Tournament loading music, because I can sit there in anticipation for someone to arrive. Oh, yeah. Just da-da-da-da-da-da. Yeah.
You're waiting for them in your lobby.
Rocket jump onto his boat and get out of there.
And you can also pick one game or application to enjoy on Retro Island, the only condition being that it has no internet connectivity. So what will you take with you, Ravi?
I would take Deluxe Paint with me, possibly the best paint package in the world. I would create bitmap graphics, animations, and colour cycling, and all of that kind of old school stuff. And I could spend ages going blind staring at a CRT doing that pixel art.
Ravi, it's been a pleasure having you as a guest today, and thank you for joining us, and good luck on Retro Island. You'll certainly be missed.
Oh, thank you. I've really enjoyed the coconuts.
Thanks, Ravi, and be sure to check Ravi out on Retro Ravi on YouTube. Get those subs up. He's got to catch up with Dan. And also, I'm sure you're already listening to the Retro Hour podcast, but if not, do check it out. There'll be links in the show notes. And if you enjoyed our show today, do be sure to check out the other episodes that are available. And you can find more retro goodness on my YouTube channel, RetroManCave.
And you can find me on the YouTube channel BackOfficeShow, to which you'll find links in the show notes, as well as links to Ravi's content and lots more besides. Thank you for listening, and until next time, goodbye.